Rucker's award as the club's most valuable player was a fitting parting tribute to the American import who will join the Townsville Suns next season. After finishing second in the NBL's most improved, Tony Jensen won the club award, Grant Kruger the defensive and Paul Kuiper the hotshot prize for the best shooting percentage. With Matthew Alexander secured for next season, the club hopes to announce further signings within the week. In tennis, Maitland's Jane Taylor won her first Newcastle District Tennis Tournament this afternoon with a straight sets win over Leah Kessel. Ranked fourth in Australia, Taylor has just returned from injury and used the tournament in preparation for the national summer circuit, including the New South Wales and Australian Opens. In the men's final, Richard Nichols downed Brian Williams 6-2, 6-love. Meantime, $2 million worth of sailing craft was on Newcastle Harbour this afternoon as a fleet of 18-foot skiffs contested the first Interstill City showdown between Newcastle and Wollongong. Prudential, skippered by Rob Brown, won the first two races, while Xerox took out the third, giving Wollongong a clean sweep and the challenge. Speaking to NBN this morning, neighbour was in rough seas fighting a 35-knot westerly gale on his yacht Newcastle, Australia. Hampered by a damaged keel, the yacht will pass through Greenwich Mean Time tomorrow and is currently 1,000 nautical miles off the African coast, 100 miles behind the third-place yacht. Neighbour is due in Cape Town on Friday or Saturday, where he will repair Newcastle, Australia's keel for the next leg to Sydney. Yesterday, David Adams in True Blue won the Class 2 race from Charleston in the United States to Cape Town in record time. Meantime, Edgeworth 10-pin bowler Anne-Marie Putney has justified her national #1 ranking, winning the Australian Open women's title in Melbourne over the weekend. It was her first success in the tournament, qualifying in the top 12 on Saturday with a 212 average, then taking the $1,000 first prize on Sunday with a 204 average in the finals.
Thieves broke into Lake Macquarie Fair at Mount Hutton at around midnight. They smashed the front door to the shopping centre and then jemmied open the roller doors on 3 separate businesses. They netted several $100s, but their biggest haul was at Whittaker's Jewellers. Glass display cabinets were smashed and hundreds of necklaces, bracelets, watches and rings were stolen, the value tens of thousands of dollars. It's thought the thieves were in the shop for around 4 minutes. An internal alarm alerting police. The alarm for the shopping complex was found tampered with yesterday but was not repaired, apparently allowing the thieves to get into the centre undetected. And at least 15 businesses in Newcastle City were also broken into overnight, as well as Carrington School, Ties Hill TAFE and the SOS Centre in Wharf Road. On most occasions, petty cash was taken, but a telescope and a pair of valuable binoculars were stolen from Northern Instruments. This afternoon, detectives from the Newcastle Crime Squad interviewed 3 Sydney teenagers in connection with the Hunter Street break-ins. They've been charged with the robbery from Northern Instruments. Inquiries are continuing. And in what's believed to be a separate incident, a dozen industries were robbed on Saturday night in the Cardiff industrial area. Thousands of dollars in tools and equipment were taken, as well as a $100,000 Jaguar car. That was recovered this afternoon. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
The battle against the drought is by no means over, but recent rains on the coastal fringe have given farmers an extra bounce in their step.
Well, basically, we've had a little bit of rain around the coast, and we've had sort of 40 mils at Dungog, and given us a bit of a glimmer of hope. So.
For the last month, farmers were selling their stock by the truckload as they had no pasture to feed them. Until this week, cattle numbers at the Maitland sale were around the 1,000 head mark. Today it was half that, a sign that producers from the Central Coast through to Maitland are gambling that conditions will improve enough for them to hang on to their stock. And predictions are there will be more rain this week. However, there seems little relief for farmers northwest of the Maitland region, still suffering under the worst drought ever to hit the valley.
The upper hunter is desperate. They're basically trying to hang on to their breeding stock now, and if they can do that, well, it'll be a great job.
It was supposed to be the launch of a book celebrating 1.5 centuries of mining by Colin Allied. It highlights an Australian success story of a small family business that grew to be the biggest coal miner in the state. But all that was overshadowed by a protest by descendants of Colin Allied miners. Glenn Russell and Bill Evans have already been served with eviction notices, with 7 more families to follow. They've been told to get out of their homes by February 1. For Bill, it would be the worst possible present for his 62nd birthday. For Glenn, it would leave his family without a home.
I don't know, really, to be honest. We've no other financial objects to sort of... We've got nowhere to go.
The residents acknowledge they have no legal rights over the land, but say they have strong moral claims.
They've had their pound of coal and their pound of flesh too, and now they want their land too.
But Colin Allied says it's been more than fair to the descendants of the people who built their homes on company land in Catherine Hill Bay. It says they've only paid nominal rent for years and say it's time for them to go.
Because we've been mining in that area for a long time, we've built up a very strong association, and we certainly don't want to cause them any distress, but at the same time we just can't let it go on indefinitely.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
The conceptual plan has been prepared by a council consultant. It provides for a village concept to cater for an influx of new residents to the area. It's also an attempt to tap into a lucrative coastal tourist market.
The plans show that urban areas will be divided by either ecological corridors or green belts or rural lands, and so those areas won't be available for future urban development.
Council's Director of Planning says clusters are preferential to urban sprawl. Under the proposal, a village at Blackhead will be created. Other centres earmarked for expansion are at Diamond Beach, Redhead and Hallidays Point. The shopping centre planned for Hallidays Point is the first step towards bringing the town into line with other coastal destinations. Many of the 40 public submissions received by Council expressed concerns over the future of subdividing outside the villages.
People who bought land in the expectation that they one day will be able to subdivide it, of course, would be very concerned that their land is going to be locked up.
The Progress Association is hoping to include residents in a council task force aimed at reaching a compromise. Tracy Walsh, NBN News. It wasn't quite Melbourne, but possibly the closest Taree residents would get to the real thing. 4,000 people filed through the gates today, wanting to see and be seen. There were punters studying the form, betting fiercely on local and interstate races. Local races were popular and many were eager to share their tips for the big race.
Paris Lane, yeah. It'd have to be, he'd be my tip, for sure.
But I'd go for Journey.
Alco for Melbourne Cup.
As the afternoon wore on, the fashions became more and more outrageous, this one taking out the most unusual hat. Race Club manager Tony Cox says the crowd was one of the largest for Melbourne Cup Day. Tracy Walsh, NBN News.
The semi-trailer was turning south on this bend near the roundabout on Lenigan Drive when the driver lost control.
When I saw how hard the truck actually hit, I knew it would be bad.
It's lost its load after it's got a difficulty trying to negotiate the bend. Clearly at this particular stage it would appear that the speed for the bend was excessive.
The load of steel piping spilled onto the road, some narrowly missing traffic. The 41-year-old driver from Tuggerawong on the Central Coast was pinned in the cabin, hot oil from the engine sump spilling onto him. Ambulance officers fed oxygen to the driver while emergency crews worked to free him, his rescuers also having to cope with the leaking oil. After almost an hour, the driver was freed and flown to the John Hunter Hospital by rescue helicopter, suffering serious burns as well as arm and chest injuries. Traffic was slowed to a crawl till the wreckage was cleared late this afternoon. Joanne Shoebridge, NBN News.
Taronga Zoo scientists have requested a sample of the food sources available to the whale at its latest location. Today, SeaWorld research staff enlisted the help of local fisheries officers and fishermen to cast this 11-metre-long net into the Manning River near Harrington. The skipper of the SeaWorld boat says the whale has made desperate attempts to find food over the past few days, moving at high speed.
He's been swimming at speeds of up to 10 knots and using up a lot of energy doing that actually, so I hope he is actually managing to, get some fish in these manoeuvres. 3
attempts were made to catch fish. All that resulted were a few leather jackets, an octopus, a toadfish and some whitebait. The sample will be analysed in Sydney.
We've just done 3 trawls with a net over a period of about 50 minutes and probably a distance of about 1 kilometre, and we haven't even picked up 200 grams of small fish.
Today's exercise has renewed concerns for the whale's survival. Experts say urgent action needs to be taken to help the whale back to the sea, where it can once again feed adequately.
He'll be living off his reserves of blubber at this stage, and that can only go on for so long.
Tracy Walsh, NBN News. Just before 7 o'clock this morning, a car travelling east along the Old Bar Road made a left-hand turn. The accident happened when the utility truck behind it failed to brake in time. The ute pushed a Toyota Hiace into the path of an oncoming Econovan. The Econovan hit a tree. The driver of the gas van trapped for nearly half an hour while emergency crews tried to free him from the wreckage. Fire officers feared the gas on board the van could be a danger to the 43-year-old driver.
A gentleman travelling in the van was heading west, has received fractures to the lower legs, head and chest injuries.
A 20-year-old Taree woman in the Hiace suffered bruising and has been released from hospital.
AIS have been informed in Newcastle. We'll be under their direction as to what action we take from here.
Tracy Walsh, NBN News.
The Wallsend South Primary School Band was going through one of its last rehearsals today before heading off to Orange this weekend for the finals of the State Schools Music Contest Star Quest. The competition involves state primary and high schools in country New South Wales and the ACT. The Wallsend South Band, featuring Year 3 through 6 students, will represent the Hunter, competing against the best from 12 other regions. The band will perform 2 items, this classical piece, the Baywood Overture, and then, to get the judges into the swing of things, the Wombat Shuffle. And not only do they play, but they truly perform each piece. Enjoyment is the name of the game for these aspiring musicians. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The former chief of the Australians for Constitutional Monarchy entered the political arena earlier this year after winning the Sydney seat of Warringah. Today, Tony Abbott was taking his message to the people as part of Newcastle University's ongoing Republican Forum.
Look, I support the Australian Constitution. I believe our Constitution has worked well for nearly 100 years and I don't think we need any radical surgery to it.
Since the debate was officially launched 2 years ago, Mr Abbott believes it's gained little support, arguing the small turnout is typical of the level of interest being generated.
The fact is, all over Australia, when republicanism is mentioned, it's either people are either yawning or they're yelling in opposition.
Mr Abbott says rewriting the Constitution would divide the nation and claims the argument goes far beyond any feelings regarding the royal family.
Becoming a republic is the most radical constitutional change Australians have ever been asked to embrace. It is potentially the biggest power grab, Canberra power grab, that we've ever been faced with, and of course historically Australians have said no to that.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Britax Brylight is one of Tari's most successful businesses, exporting manufactured car parts all over the world. But it's the staff structure that's grabbed the attention of 9 Turkish officials. They represent government-owned steel and textile industries. Britax Brylight
When the junior kart drivers line up for the Dairy Vale title in Adelaide next week, there'll be 7 races from the Hunter Valley that will be there with a fighting chance.
I like speed and competing.
None of these races are old enough to drive off the track, and for the youngest of our representatives, it will be at least a decade before they're old enough to hold a licence. But they handle these 100cc karts with consummate ease, emulating the drivers they one day hope to replace.
Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill. I like, in IndyCar, I like Alonso Jr.
What's good about the karts?
Oh, the way they handle when they're only 2 centimetres off the ground. It's good.
Ricky, Chris and Lindsay Bunt, Aaron Redding, Daniel Foote, Trent Morsey and Simon Roberts leave for Adelaide on Wednesday. They'll compete against go-kart racers from 7 to 16 years of age from Friday in the lead-up to next Sunday's Formula One Grand Prix. Joanne Shoebridge, NBN News.
After moving from cramped quarters in Vincent Street, CES staff are working in bigger and more comfortable premises on the corner of Edward and Cumberland Streets. As well as additional workspaces, the two-storey office block features conference rooms and interviewing areas for a community where the unemployment rate is more than 8% above the national average.
Now we have a very large waiting area. We've introduced more job boards and in turn we're able to display more out-of-area and interstate job vacancies as well for our clients.
An employer service unit has been set up to allow for easier access to job training and subsidy schemes following the federal government's recent white paper on employment.
Now we have the provision of a reception desk which is able to streamline and reduce the waiting times incurred by people when they come into the office and direct them into the area that they require.
Local member Eric Fitzgibbon officially took the unveiling honours. Launched a decade ago, the Healthy Heartbeat program set out to make people living in the coalfields area healthier. It's been a community effort, takeaway food shops adopting more nutritious cooking methods by using monosaturated oils. The state government has commended the program under its Healthy Country Community scheme. Representing the minister, Dr Brian Pizzuti, today handed over a cheque for $8,000. Smokers were targeted, more exercise and better eating encouraged.
There's been a great change in Cessnock in the community. More people are walking, more people are more concerned about what they eat. And particularly with my other hat on as the Director of Nursing at the local hospital here, I see a great change in people's lifestyles.
The coalfields area has the unenviable reputation of having the highest death rate linked to heart disease in Australia. While authorities predict change will be slow, it's become the community's #1 health concern.
We would hope that in the near future that we would see a greater reduction in the number of heart-related deaths in the Cessnock area.
It's possibly the most important move in the history of coal mining in the Hunter Valley. Coal companies have long pushed for rail lines which feed into the Port of Newcastle to be opened up, allowing private enterprise to compete with the state government-owned freight rail. The lobbying has paid off with this announcement by Premier Fay.
We're prepared to say that we will put freight rail, that is the government transportation of coal, on the same footing as any private sector operation in the transportation of coal from the coal mines to the port.
Freight rail hauls around 40 million tonnes of coal to the port each year, worth around $290 million to the state government. While most of that direct revenue will be lost, it's expected to be more than recouped by Australia as coal companies increase their competitiveness. The savings for coal companies have been put at around $1.90 a tonne.
It is estimated that that will be worth over the next 5 years about $200 million in benefit to our coal industry in the Hunter Valley.
Freight Rail has recently purchased 84 new locomotives, putting it in a good position to compete with private industry. However, the Public Transport Union, to which Freight Rail employees belong, has condemned the move and has questioned the government's motives.
We're hiving it off, or selling it off, to get a quick dollar to fund the Olympic Games. What they're doing is they're selling off one of the major asset of the state government that earns revenue.
The state's major coal companies, however, believe there will be long-term benefits for the Hunter, which will equal the Mine Hunter project.
Well, our preliminary estimates would indicate that there's something of the order of 2,500 jobs will probably result from this type of initiative.
Jodie McKay, NBN News.
For a few of the thousands of former students and dozens of former lecturers who've been associated with the Geography Department, it was back to the classroom today. Among the dignitaries, one of the department's founding members who saw geography grow from an elective arts subject to a standalone social science, delving in political, regional, economic and social geography.
Very proud of the department, very proud to be associated with it still.
The Geography Department has earned international kudos in areas such as soil erosion, air pollution and climatology. Its students have been involved locally in projects including honeysuckle, the welfare of street kids, earthquake rehabilitation and harbour sedimentation.
Written by David Taggart, Seascape survived a protest from jockey Alf Matthews on Idea, which finished second, while Western Red was third. To the Queen Elizabeth Stakes over 2,530 metres, which featured the Maxleys trained Canberra Cup winner Nasser Biddy. Ridden by Paddy Payne, the winner of the South Australian Derby, Bullwinkle started at 8s, outstaying Bonamici and 4-1 equal favourite Nasser Biddy.
Lake Macquarie Council has received a development application to build a housing estate on this site in Jarrett Street at Toronto. The proposal, from a consortium led by Jones Homes, would see 54 houses built on the land.
I believe it's 32 three-bedroom dwellings and 22 two-bedroom dwellings.
The land was previously levelled and cleared some years ago for a mobile home development.
That proposal was rejected by Council, but I'm fairly confident that this new proposal will be a success.
The proposal was considered by Council's Planning Committee last night.
They decided to recommend approval for the development.
The plans will go before the entire Council next week. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The waiving of fees for the one-year bridging course is one of a number of crisis management strategies the university has devised. Today, the uni's registrar met with the deans of various faculties to work out other measures. Enrolments are down by around 400, the uni claiming there's been a dramatic drop in demand, coupled with fierce competition from Sydney-based universities. With the threat of cuts in funding, the strategies are aimed at boosting numbers. Next year, all fees associated with the Open Foundation course will be dropped to entice potential students into the uni's fold. Late application fees will be waived if applicants are unsuccessful in their chosen course. High school leavers in drought-affected areas can apply for special accommodation scholarships, and nurses will be made more aware of postgraduate courses. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
When Newcastle City Council conducted tests on 4 houses in Matheson Street, the lead levels found in the backyards were 300 parts per million, or 5 times the national guideline. The soil contained slag as well as lead-based paint. But while Carrington has been targeted for testing this time, the Public Health Unit says any property in an older area may have higher than normal levels.
Where you have an old house, a house that was built prior to 1960, 1970, that it is bound to have lead-containing paint on it at some stage.
Children are most affected by high lead levels. Most lead must be eaten or breathed in to be of concern. There are no children living in the 4 houses. The Environment Protection Authority has recommended a series of measures, including replacing the soil where it might be exposed, covering it with grass, and advising any new residents of the situation.
We need to protect subsequent families that are coming in there if they have children. And I think that's a question which the Council is considering.
Environment Minister Chris Hartcher today announced a series of measures based on the Lead Task Force report. They include random sampling of children's blood lead levels, reducing lead in petrol, air, soil, water and dust, and mounting an intensive public awareness campaign. The task force is due to visit Pasminco and surrounding suburbs tomorrow. Joanne Shoebridge, NBN News.
The scenes of joy that greeted Sydney's win were reflected in the race to share the spoils of victory. But a survey by Newcastle TAFE logistics students shows that the Hunters race may have already been run, with many businesses not taking advantage of the opportunities the Olympics offer. Most sports will be held in Sydney, but there are many other avenues for businesses trying to get an Olympic start.
Well, obviously there's food, clothing, transport needs, and any obviously spillover from accommodation requirements that might be needed up this way.
The study's plan of attack includes the establishment of a hunter group to lobby Sydney's Olympic Organising Committee. It wants Newcastle Airport to market itself as an alternative to Sydney. It's also called for the upgrading of the Newcastle to Sydney freeway, along with improved rail facilities. And under the plan, manufacturing and retail businesses would be encouraged to move to the Hunter.
I think it's got a great potential if the Newcastle businesses are interested in obtaining some of that benefit.
"33-year-old taxi driver David Maloney was recovering in Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital this afternoon, accompanied by his wife Jenny. He recounted last night's attack. He picked up a man at Adamstown and was heading to nearby Blackbutt Reserve when the passenger pulled out a gun.
He just asked me to take him to bottom of Blackbutt there, and then he demanded my money with his gun.
Mr Maloney gave the man his takings. As he turned his head, the attacker pistol whipped him over the back of his skull.
A few times he got really nasty, so I thought he was going to use the gun on me, and he was threatening me with it the whole time, so I honestly thought he was going to use it.
Police say the description Mr Maloney has given them is extremely detailed. They're hoping someone may recognise the assailant. He had a long light brown coloured ponytail which was tied with 2 elastic bands. He also had a pock-marked face. He was wearing black steel-capped boots, black tracksuit pants and a short-sleeved sloppy joe with a yellow and red motif. Mr Maloney has also told police he smelt of rusty metal. Jodie McKay, NBN News.